Of course, I think the coffee break's more popular than me. I think people come back and I can imagine I'm probably wrong. It's actually it's quite good being on at this particular time of the day because the speakers previous to me have covered off a number of the points that this presentation is about. So I guess a lot of my role here is really to summarize some of the previous presentations. Now, Figjam is a Dubai-based food branding agency, so basically we use research, strategy and design to either solve F&B problems or deliver opportunities. Now, those opportunities are either new concepts or they're successful concepts that need to be captured to grow more than anything else. So as you can see, the subject of today's presentation is creating a brand identity, knowing who you are, what you stand for, and how do you create a brand that's got a clear strategy, a clear identity, one that follows through that strategy and identity across all the various intangible and tangible touch points that brands have to make sure that they're engaged with their consumers. And how do you stand out in an increasingly competitive crowd? You've heard, I think, throughout the day that Dubai is, the word saturated or nearing saturation has been used a lot during the course of today. And, brands who are entering this market do need to look at where they position themselves, how they identify with their audience and what values that they hold so that they are relevant to the people that will be engaging with them. I mean, pretty much everybody in this room who either owns a concept or is looking to start a concept will be aiming at quite a small percentage of Dubai's population. I think the statistic is that 70% of Dubai's population earns under 15,000 dirhams a month, which means a lot of people are aiming at 30%. Now that 30% becomes a very powerful consumer. They get the choice of how they're going to engage with your brand, whether they're going to engage with your brand. And you as operators, if you aren't giving them what they want, tangibly and intangibly, you'll find that they become a very fickle crowd. So, to move on to this, kind of what I've started saying. Consumers have changed. We've heard about the millennials. Right earlier was talking about the millennials in terms of when he was talking about Bangkok and stuff. But the question is going to be, have brands adapted? A lot of brands have adapted, certainly in the retail space, the mobile phone space, technology spaces, brands have adapted to how the consumers have changed and how their behaviors have changed. But have F&B brands adapted themselves sufficiently enough to stay relevant to today's demanding audience? So let's just look at millennials, just to give you some, to define them more than anything else. They were born between 1980 and 2000. Now, how anybody in that age group has got an opinion is beyond me, but apparently they do. They're a demanding lot. Us old guys, we're very nice and casual and easy, but these millennials, they've grown up on social media and they've grown up on being a very, like I say, a very demanding audience. They're connected. And what does that mean? So social media-wise, they're very connected. I've got some statistics here that I'll read out to you. That the survey by Global Media Insights said that 80% of millennials have mobile phones. 75% of them are active on social media. Now, in the UAE alone, 56% of the population are active on social media. And if you live here, you'll know that Instagram is very popular. Of all the social media techniques, platforms, Instagram is extremely popular. Now, that 56% of the population who are connected and are on social media is actually higher than Canada, higher than Germany, higher than South Korea. On average, UAE residents spend close to 3.6 hours on social media, which is a significant amount of time. I'm not one of them. I work very hard, but 3.6 hours is a long time to be on social media. They're researchers. They spend a lot of time researching before they buy. They'll go online. They'll look at the various options that are available to them. They'll evaluate them, and then they'll make a decision. And then they'll make a decision where to buy or what to buy and how to buy it. They might buy it online. There was a statistic, I can't remember the exact facts, but it's a mobile phone stat from the States where I think 46% of consumers who were asked said that they looked online before they bought anything. And of that, then 97% of that 46% then went and actually stayed online and didn't go into a store to buy anything, which shows that clearly that they're buying the way they want to buy their I understand it's a mobile phone example, but there's relevancies, I think, in terms of how consumers are thinking nowadays. They're emotional. I mean, in terms of the fact that they rely very much on intangible connectivity, which sounds a wonderful thing, I understand. And if you in the world of branding, consumer consumer engagement through intangibles, through customer journey maps and some of the more emotional aspects of how a consumer makes it. We're all consumers in the room. And if you take yourselves out of your day job and put yourselves in the shoes of a consumer, you will every time that you actually go and engage with a brand, you're making a decision. You're thinking about what happens. It's either a positive anxiety, it's a positive thing or a negative thing. And then the brand has its objective as a brand owner or an operator is to actually provide you with the solutions to each point on that journey, so that your anxieties are actually covered off. So emotionally, that's how today's consumer behaves. And a recurring theme of this presentation will be the fact that today's consumers don't necessarily buy how and what you do. They certainly buy why you do it. So if your values and your purpose resonate with them as consumers, then your chance of keeping them and making them into brand advocates is certainly a lot higher. And they buy better as a consequence of the research they do. They buy better. They want value. We've heard about, I think a couple of guys have said previously about the luxury and affordable luxury, and the fact that that consumers want to be treated well. Not that they didn't before; they just didn't know they wanted to be treated well before, and they accepted what was given to them. But nowadays, they want to be treated well. They want to be able to afford the finer things in life. But they will research. You can't fob them off, for want of a better phrase, than potentially you could do before, because they do their research before they engage in any brand. But the objective as a brand owner is to make sure that you convert them from being a non-devotee, for want of a better phrase, to someone who's actually engaged and actually wants to be a brand advocate of yours. There's a statistic that I read this morning that in the fast food business, if those who are advocates of brands are 27% more likely to talk about the brand in social media terms, but also an increase in 27% of value in terms of their spend if they're advocates of your brand. And the last one says, look to simplify their lives. A lot of that I think you see in terms of the uncomplicated nature of how they demand their food to be nowadays, in terms of the honest burger and the traceability, and the fact that they want to know where everything's coming from. And I think that's a lot to do with the simplification of life. They don't want to have to go through reams and reams of jargon. Michael this morning was talking about when in fine food restaurant stuff. You don't want to know. They don't really want to know about where the cows come from, or what it did in the morning, or what paper it read. I think that's right. But they do want to know. They do want to be able to eat their food, and they want to have their life simplified for them. So that's just an overview, really, of today's consumer, but how brands adapted, to be able to cater to this new audience. Do brands understand buying behaviour? Certainly, look in the UAE. If you look at how restaurants are still set up, a lot of restaurants concepts post summer when people go travelling, and they'll see a concept some in the UK or Australia or somewhere, and it'll be the next best thing. It'll come back here, and lo and behold, they've signed a lease somewhere. They've hired an interior design company, a chef, and off we go. There's no real understanding of actually whether the consumer wanted that in the first place. Very little research gets done in terms of pure consumer behaviour. Where are the gaps in them? Not only tangible research in terms of quantitative methodologies but more the qualitative nature in terms of buyer behaviours. What do we need in this marketplace that's going to satisfy the values that we have as consumers? And brands need to also provide value in terms of the fact that we talked about affordable luxury before, the fact that consumers research a lot nowadays, and they actually they want value for money. They're prepared to pay, but there's got to be value for money. It doesn't have to be cheap, it's just got to be value for money. And then we talked about the emotional connection, and like I said, people nowadays, today's consumers buy why. They buy why you exist, what are your purpose, what are your values. And I guess throughout this presentation you'll see from our perspective as Figjam, the value proposition and the core values that you hold as businesses is what people continue to engage with. And to stand out in a crowd and to gain consistency and frequency, which I guess at the end of the day is brand equity, then your core values need to shine through. And just in that, in terms of the understanding buyer behaviour, and I can't remember who mentioned it earlier, but the customer journey maps that exist in terms of the cycle, in terms of research, evaluation of brands, and then the actual engagement. I think one of the things that a brand must do also is shorten that cycle, make sure that the evaluation cycle is a lot less, i.e. get them to become brand advocates as quickly as you can, so that you don't give your competitors a chance to steal the march, as it were, if they've got the same sort of values as you have. So finding out what consumers want, I mean, this is a very simplistic steps in the consumer decision-making process. First of all, there's obviously need recognition in terms of what does a consumer actually need. And the consumer needs, I suppose, they recognize the needs, I suppose, in three different ways. One is when they get frustrated with the fact that a product that isn't performing as expected. So you've told them something. I suppose that's one of the things about advertising nowadays, why it maybe doesn't work as strongly as it does, because it's not as trusted as it was before. So the messages that the traditional forms of advertising give necessarily don't resonate with customers as well as they do. And certainly if a product doesn't perform as advertised, then the consumer recognizes a need for looking elsewhere. And I guess if a consumer runs out of a product, I guess if the product is in line with expectation and values and nothing's changed, then you'll go back and buy the same product again. But let's say it doesn't. At that point, you're going to start evaluating, and you go into that cycle I just said in terms of evaluation of other alternatives, and then you start to make decision-making process off the back of that. And then I suppose with everything that's out there, there are other services and products that potentially are better. Well, certainly their advertising is better, and again, the same process happens. So there's needs recognition in terms of the consumer starts off by recognizing they have a need to purchase a product, make a change, or whatever that might be. Then obviously you'll go through a information change. A lot of it's online nowadays in terms of making comparative pricing, looking at promotions, looking at other opportunities, looking at bundles, whatever that might be. And then the evaluation of the alternatives. And obviously then you get to the purchasing decision. So you've decided what you're going to buy. Then you obviously decide where you're going to buy it and how you're going to buy it, like I said earlier. Then after that, it's the post-purchase decision, which is probably the most important or the most interesting part of all that in terms of where social media really fits in terms of when you find something that you've engaged with because it suits your values and your purpose, you then tell everybody about it. You go onto social media, you take pictures of it, you tweet it, you copy your friends, all that sort of stuff happens. And then suddenly, because your friends presumably got the same sort of core values and stuff as you have, that's why they're your friends. So those friends obviously suddenly become advocates of that brand, or certainly will give it a go because you've told them to. There's a certain level of advocacy there. So in terms of what consumers want in today's world, we've talked about the value for money, the affordable luxury. They want consistency. If you go to the same brands over and over again because you know what you're going to get. You might try different brands, just maybe it's a change. Like we said, there's a need recognition. You've decided you actually want to try something else, but you actually want consistency at the end of the day. Simplicity, we've talked about already in terms of the consumers want a simple life. They don't want to have a complicated jargon or complicated brands that are pushing their services onto them. And then the last one, customer journey and customer service. The customer journey map, obviously, from a retail perspective, is something, and from an IT perspective, a lot of service industries use consumer journey mapping to make sure, like I said before, that all the anxieties that consumers face across the point, pre-engagement, during engagement, and post-engagement are actually identified, not taken for granted, and that design strategies are put into place to make sure that the customer is actually looked after. Now, a lot of that, from an operational level, is service flow. It is service flow, right? I walk in there, there's enough room to push the buggy through or whatever. I buy here, I pay here, I go there, I do this, I do that, I sit there, all that sort of stuff. But a lot of it's also intangible in terms of the emotional aspects that customers feel. So, for example, you want to go somewhere, and you're walking past and it's breakfast. You put, for example, if you put the coffee machine at the front, the smell of coffee percolates through outside through the door and stuff. And then obviously that has an emotional engagement with the consumer, and the chance of them actually engage with the brand a lot greater. It's a simplistic way of looking at it, but if you actually if you map out the anxieties that your consumer is going to face at all points of the engagement with you, and actually design the solutions to it, your chance of your brand gaining loyalty and gaining customers and then consistency and frequency over time is certainly going to be a lot stronger rather than leaving anything to chance. So having done some research and finding out actually what your consumers do want, which is where you'd start theoretically, you then want to build a strategy based upon your values and your purpose, because ultimately that's what people are buying. They'll see you through. If you build a brand based upon the what and the how, in terms of I sell this for that price, yeah, look, anybody can do that. If you look at Microsoft, for example, Bill Gates wanted a computer on every desk and in every home, but they weren't a PC manufacturer. What people actually ended up buying was the values, those values there that Bill Gates had. And if you look at the difference then between Apple and Microsoft, Steve Jobs wanted to change the world. He was a revolutionary. But ultimately, they both delivered. The end user experience was laptops, was computers back in the day. But if you were a designer, you went to Apple because, yes, there was obviously some software you had to use because of Apple, but fundamentally you chose Apple because it was cooler. And that resonated with designers who wanted to change the world. But most other people chose PCs because it resonated with their values. So that's what people bought. They bought based upon the values of the brand. So you as brand owners need to make sure that your core values and purpose shine through, and it isn't just a case of here's a product, you can go buy it. I mean, if you take burgers for example, there's burgers everywhere, but the ones that are starting to work now resonate with the millennials' lifestyle in terms of that simplicity, the honest burger movement. They're transparent. You know where things are coming from. You know the product. There's no messing about in terms of how they're going to serve it. It's straight in front of you. And the core values and purpose of the bloke who started, the lady who started that brand, was that they wanted to take the burger back to its roots and give you basically a nice patty that came from proper meat with lettuce, tomato, and a bun that they baked themselves, as opposed to modifying it and preserving it and all the other things that the burger brand became. So you create a strategy based on your own values and purpose. You do your research first, you create your strategy build upon your own values, and then you design the solution from that, which is designing an integrated brand. We have this thing called a square of design, and actually a lot of these points in the square of design have been touched on already. We've talked about emotional design in terms of that people buy the why and not the how and the what. There was a study in the Harvard Business Review. There was a credit card company in the States that designed a card specifically for millennials. And it was designed to inspire emotional connection and all that sort of type of thing. And amongst that segment, the usage of the card grew by 70%, just on the fact the card was specifically designed in terms of how it was used, what you could buy with it, how it was marketed, how it was positioned, etc., etc. And they obviously use social media a lot to get the message out there. 70% uptake in terms of the use of the card. And then what it actually then went to lead to was a 40% increase in the number of new accounts that this bank set up, purely off the back of the fact they actually created a product based upon the strategy of targeting millennials. So connecting with your customers emotionally is an important part of the square design, and as is the commercial part. So you need to value that. You're not just going to chuck some money into it. I mean, I know it does happen, but you're not going to chuck money into something and not worry about the outcomes. You need a return on investment. So you value your brand beforehand. You make some changes to it. There's a cost to change. Value it afterwards. Cost-benefit analysis. Does it commercially stack up? You can design anything you want, but if it doesn't add an end value to the process, what's the point of doing it in the first place? Making it design for design's sake has no part, I don't think, in today's marketplace. It's got to be functional. There's no point creating, the last one of this will be creativity. There's no point creating a fantastic product. It looks great, the food's brilliant, but you can't get to it. If you can't get to something, if it's not functional, there's no point actually doing it in the first place. So, but all those four things have got to work together. You've got to emotionally connect with your customers. Why? The why part of the equation. It's got to make commercial sense. It's got to be creative in terms of, the product itself has got to wow people. People are going to go, that was cool, I enjoyed that, that was really good. Across everything, across all that customer journey map, all these things are relevant. Creativity in terms of how it looks, how you feel, how the product comes to you, what it tastes like, what plates on, what the OSD is like, all that sort of thing. But functionally, does it work? Can you actually get to it? So if you go research strategy and then design the outcomes, at the end of the day, you've just got to be consistent, frequent, and realistic in terms of standing out in the marketplace. You've done your research, you've created a decent strategy, and you've designed some good outcomes from it. You've thought through everything, but at the end of the day, you need to make sure that your brand is consistent all the way along that process to be able to engender trust and loyalty through both tangible and intangible elements. So the tangible parts are pretty straightforward, the product, the comfortable seating, whatever that might well be. But intangibly, people buy how you make them feel. And that's probably one of the biggest focal points that I think F&B brands need to, and do focus on. I'm not suggesting for a second that brands don't, but some, I think the majority of brands need to change their thinking and actually work through the fact that the tangible stuff is, if you go for a burger, and use the same example again, you're getting a burger, so you've related to that already, but how do you feel afterwards? And that will be the thing that people will talk about afterwards. It isn't necessarily the product itself, it's how you made them feel as consumers. And then, just keeping on the brand consistency, for us there's 5 ways, 5 routes to brand consistency. One is, like I've said already, make sure your values are at the center of what you do, not some periphery that you just sort of crowbarred in because you know that you need a mission statement and you need a brand manifesto and values and all that sort of stuff. Actually, the values that you hold as owners of businesses is what people buy. And you need to stay relevant. So whilst your why should always stay the same, the what and the how and the strategy and the plans you have need to be adaptable. You can't stand still in a marketplace that's moving as quickly as this is. And obviously, the repetition of your core values through and through every single touch point. So everything from the space, the product, the service, the communication, whatever that might be, the core values have to shine through at all stages. And obviously, your consumers are always telling you things. A lot of it's the old two ears, one mouth thing. You need to. There needs to be a lot of listening and engagement that needs to go on with the consumers because they're the ones ultimately paying the bill, and they're the ones who will tell you what you want if only people listen to what they were saying. And then at the end, the final point is to take a medium to long-term view on things. I think, especially in this market, and there was a rent discussion earlier. People tend to, if you look at the process, like I said, of setting up a restaurant, people have an idea, sign a lease, hire an interior design agency, hire a chef, start writing some checks. The pressure's on. But if you take a medium to long-term view on that business, then what happens is that when people don't come in because there's been no research and no one's actually asked the consumer what they want in the first place, people start changing their brand. People start adding this, adding that, adding that. My friend says add this because it'll add revenue to you. Well, it doesn't really happen that way. If people have a medium to long-term, all you do is confuse the consumer. If you have a medium to long-term view on your business and set it up on the back of research and strategy, then your chance of achieving brand consistency are greater. And just a little bit on valuation of brands. So brand valuation in terms of return on investment. Now you need to know at the beginning what your brand's worth in terms of whatever that problem is you're trying to fix. Let's say you're trying to fix a problem. You've got a problem with something, revenues are down or whatever. So you've got to start. You've got a quantifiable. You can only measure what's quantifiable. So you've got a quantifiable starting point. You make some changes to it. That's going to cost you some money. And then obviously you need to measure the results at the end of the day. So at least you know whether the problem you were tackling was the right problem in the first place, and the money you injected into it was the correct amount of money to achieve the correct solution. And then just in ways of you can value your brand. One is on the income, obviously an income-based valuation, market-based in terms of what the valuation in the market is, were you to sell it, and then the cost. If you're driving cost down, if cost is one of your valuation methodologies in terms of this is what you're trying to achieve, then you would use cost-based valuation as your main tool. Obviously, different businesses have got different ways of valuing their brands. And these are just 3 examples of how it could be done. So just to finish off really, just to summarize things, for us branding is really the connectivity between a product and the consumer, and that connection is tangible as well as intangible. For us it's very much a research strategy and design solution. Research the consumer's needs, find out what they want, don't presuppose what they want because yes, gut feeling will get you a certain way, but research and gut feeling gets you a lot further than just gut feeling by itself. Use data and insights as a platform for your growth. Design an integrated strategy and solution, so strategy becomes the boundaries within which you then provide a design solution. Go to market, test the solution, and quantify it through brand valuation before, during, and after the process. And at the end of it, theoretically, you stand out from the crowd. Thank you very much.